Now, during the events of the American Civil War, the American Congress was anything but idle during that time. One of the things they did was they were finally able to get pushed through the Railroad Acts they've been trying to get gone through for the last 10 or so years. The Railroad Acts of 1862 and of 1864. What that did was it finally was able to get the funding from the federal government to the railroad companies to build a transcontinental railroad connecting both sides of the country. And so they actually gave them money to the to the Central Pacific Railroad to build one from Sacramento, California, all the way through Nevada. And they also got the Union Pacific going from Omaha, Nebraska, all the way out west, and finally meeting in Promontory Point, Utah in 1869. Now, this had been stalled in Congress many times, largely because the North and the South could not agree on how it was to be done. Now, the Southern politicians were not thrilled about the idea of the railroad going through the northern area and not benefiting the South, and vice versa. The North were not thrilled with the idea that the Southern politicians wanted the railroad to go through the South. So, with all of the Southern seats, minus a handful, especially one of the future President of the United States, Andrew Johnson, who maintained his seat in Tennessee, they were able to finally be able to get those railroad bills passed because pretty much all the South had vacated their seats, minus a handful. Now, they were able to get the funding for that, and they were also able to get a lot of things done with the railroads. The North and South did not agree on the railroads and how it should be done in the first place, because the South tended to follow much of Thomas Jefferson's point of view on small farmers and not focusing on big business, because many in the South argued that if they had these big railroads, it would hurt the small farmer, which it actually did, because they get the big railroads going. You had the small-time ranchers and farmers that could not compete with the large beef companies out of Chicago. So it actually put a lot of the smaller farmers, it really hurt them really bad. So that's one of the things that came from that. And another thing with the railroads that were so important was during the war itself was the North had a standardized rail gauge to fit one specific type of railroad car. The South did not. They had several different types of rail car. For example, you're trying to send one from point A to point B and they're 1,000 miles away. What happens is you'll load up the train in one area, it'll travel about 100, 200 miles, then it has to stop to completely offload that train to get on the next train, go to the next destination, because the rail gauges, meaning the spacing between the tracks of the train, are so different because it's not one standard rail track. So they have to offload the entire train, load everything onto the next train, and load it on that way as well. So it was a long, tedious task rather than just having one straight shot from point A to point B. They have to stop, unload, put on the next train, take it to the next stop, unload it there, put on the next train, and so on and so forth. Complete nightmare. So when the Union Army took over many of the areas in the South throughout the war, one of the first things the Corps of Engineers did was they got to work straight on the railway system to move the gauge to be perfectly in line for the Union rail cars. So those are some of the things that happened with the railroads. There you go.